Hi girls, today I'm going to explain the concept above the topic preprocessor. Preprocessor is a unique concept in C language. The preprocessor as its name implies is a program that processes the source code before it passes through the compiler. It operates under the control of what is known as preprocessor command lines or directives. Preprocessor directives are placed in the source program before the main line, before the source code passes through the compiler. It is examined by the preprocessor for any preprocessor directives. If there are any appropriate actions are taken, and then the source program is handed over to the compiler. Once again, I repeat this, the preprocessor is a program that processes the source code before it passes through the compiler. Preprocessor directives follow special syntax rules that are different from the normal C syntax. Preprocessor has special syntax rules. They all begin with the symbol hash in the column 1 and do not require a semicolon at the end. Okay, because every C statements are ended with semicolon, but here in the preprocessor it does not require a semicolon at the end. Like that, it begins with the symbol hash in column 1. We already used the directive hash define and hash include to a limited extent. A set of commonly used preprocessor directives and their functions are given here. Hash define, that means define a macro substitution. Hash undef undefines a macro. Hash include specifies the file to be included. If def, test for macro definition. Endif specifies the end of hash if and def, test whether a macro is not defined. Hash if, test a compile time condition. Hash else specifies alternatives when if hash if test fails. These directives can be divided into 3 categories. The first one is macro substitution directives. Second one is the file inclusion. The third one is the compiler control directives. The first one is the macro substitution. Macro substitution is a process where an identifier in a program is replaced by a predefined string. So macro substitution means where an identifier in a program is replaced by a predefined string composed of one or more tokens. The preprocessor accomplishes this task under the direction of hash define statement. This is the syntax of the macro definition. Simply it is called as macro. The general form is hash define, identifier and string. So here this preprocessor start with the symbol hash, and then there is a no space between the hash and the D, and the D should be in the small letter. Like that, there is no semicolon at the end of the statement. Okay. If this statement is included in the program at the beginning, then the preprocessor replaces every occurrence of the identifier in the source code by the string. Okay. If this statement is included in the program at the beginning, the preprocessor replaces every occurrence of the identifier in the source code by the string. The keyword hash define is returned just as the shown, starting from the first column followed by the identifier and a string with at least one blank space between them. You have to give one blank space between them. Hash define, a space, identifier, a space and a string. So note that the definition is not terminated with semicolon, and also the string may be any text while the identifier must be a valid C name. Here the identifier must be a valid C name. There are different forms of macro substitution. The most common forms are given here. The first one is the simple macro substitution. Second one is the augmented macro substitution, and the third one is the nested macro substitution. The first one is simple macro substitution. Simple string replacement is commonly used to define constants. For example, definition of constants are here. We can see hash define count. The value of the count is 100 here. So all these constants are declared in the capital letters only. And then there is no semicolon here. Start with the hash. There is no space between the hash and the D. D should be in the small letter. All this is also called as the symbolic constants. The identifier also called as the symbolic constants, that must be in capital letters only. While you are giving a string, that must be enclosed between the double quotes. Notice that we have written all macros, that means identifiers, in capitals. It is a convention to write all macros in capitals to identify them as symbolic constants. Okay. A definition such as hash define yum5 means the yum, whenever the occurrence of yum in the program, yum is replaced with the value of 5. So we'll replace all the occurrence of yum with 5, starting from the line of definition to the end of the program. However, a macro inside a string does not get replaced. Consider the following two lines. Now here this is the example. Total equal to yum into value. Here the value of yum is 5. And the value of value is any value. It may be your choice. Here printf yum is equal to yum means the value here, the output will be the 5. These two lines would be changed during pre-processing as follows. Total equal to 5 into value. Here the value 5 is placed here. Notice that the string yum equal to %d is left unchanged. A macro definition can include more than a simple constant value. It can be included expression as well as the following or the valid statements. Okay, a macro may be, the value of the macro may be in the expressions also. Here you can see hash define, area is the symbolic constant name or identifier. This is the value, that is the replacement string, 5 into 1.46. In the program, the identifier, whenever the identifier area are present in the program, the value 5 into 12.46 will be replaced. Like that, the size, and then the replacement string is size of int into 4. And then the 2 pi is a symbolic constant, and the string replacement string is 2.0 into 3.14, like that. Okay. So whenever we use expressions for replacement, care should be taken to prevent an unexpected order of evaluation. Because you people knew about the evaluation of expressions and the highest priority, how the expressions will be evaluated according to the priorities of the operators and parentheses, like that. So you have to take some care while using these expressions in programs. Here this is the example, ratio equal to d by a, where d and a are macros defined. Hash define d, the replacement string for d is 45 minus 22, for a 78 plus 32. For example, if the result of the preprocessor substitution for d and a is ratio is equal to 45 minus 22 by 78 plus 32. It's okay. This is certainly different from the expected expression using the parenthesis. If you want to place the parenthesis, you have to mention in the replacement string itself. For example, hash define d, within the parenthesis you have to mention the replacement string. It is a wise practice to use parentheses for expression used in macro definitions. Okay. The preprocessor performs a literal text substitution whenever the defined name occurs. This explains why we can't use a semicolon to dominate hash define statement. This also suggests that we can use a macro to define almost anything. For example, we can use the definitions here. Hash define test is the identifier or symbolic constant. The replacement text is if x greater than y. And then another symbolic constant and and then hash define. Print is a symbolic constant. The replacement string for the print is printf very good. Here the statement to be built is test and print. The preprocessor would translate this above line into this: if x greater than y, printf very good. Some tokens of C syntax are confusing or error prone. For example, a common programming mistake is used to token equal to in the place of token double equal to in logical expressions. Similar is the case with the token double ampersand. Okay, so for these confusing statements are avoided by using this type of macros. For example, a few definitions that might be useful in building error-free and more readable programs are by using this. For example, sometimes the programmer get confused between a single equal to and comparison equal to and single ampersand and double ampersand. At that place, you can also use this macros. Okay, so hash define equals equal to double equal and double n or symbol not equal, like that. Okay, so here this is the identifier, this is the replacement string. For example, if this is the start means void main under curly brace, and then some programs are written here. If total, here the equals means double equal, because the string, the replacement string here for equals is double equal to. So here we need not to mention the replacement string, you just give the symbolic constants. Here the value for and is double ampersand. Here also for equals, it replaces the equals with double equal to. Okay, so and then for increment, it take the replacement value plus plus and the count. So like that you have to use the macros here. So this this is the first one, simple macro. Next, this is the macros with arguments. The preprocessor permits us to define macro more complex and more useful form of replacements. It take the form hash define identifier. This is the arguments and number of arguments, and then the replacement string. Notice that there is no space between the macro identifier and the left parenthesis. There is no space between this identifier and the parenthesis. The identifier F1, F2, Fn are normal macro arguments that are analogous to the formal arguments in a function definition. So here you can see this example. This is the basic difference between the simple replacement discussed above and the replacement of macro with arguments. Here you can see some examples of macro with argument. Hash define. This is the identifier or symbolic constants, and this the parenthesis here is x. The replacement string is x into x into x. Whenever cube of x is placed in the program, it is replaced with parenthesis x into x into x. For example, if the following statement appears later in the program, volume is equal to cube of side, the preprocessor would expand this statement to volume is equal to side into side into side within parenthesis. Consider the following statement, volume equal to cube of a plus b. The preprocessor would expand to volume equal to a plus b into a plus b into a plus b, which should obviously not produce the correct result. This is because the preprocessor performs a blind substitution of the argument a plus b in the place of x. This shortcoming can be corrected by using parentheses for each occurrence of formal arguments in the string. So you have to mention the inner parenthesis here, okay, because by using this it would not produce the correct result, so you have to mention the inner parenthesis correctly. So the same above symbolic constant is replaced with hash define cube of x. X is the argument passed to the identifier cube, and then here you can see outermost parenthesis and the innermost parenthesis. By considering this, the result should be produced in the normal way. Okay, so remember to use parenthesis for each occurrence of the formal arguments as well as the whole string. Some commonly used definitions are hash define max of a comma b. This is the ternary operator, ternary condition. Wherever max of a comma b is used in the program, it is replaced with this replacement text. Okay, so these are all the examples of macro with arguments. So I will explain you the nesting of macros and file inclusion. and compiler directives in my next video. Okay, thank you, girls.